What's up everybody, hope you're having an amazing day so far. I'm your host Phil, and today's video we're going to check out Bogren Digital's brand new drum library which they just released featuring ELOY CASAGRANDE. Here comes ELOY Drums. Hey there everybody, welcome again to today's video. Glad you're tuning in, thank you so much. I'm super excited for this video because Bogren Digital has released a new drum library, and me being a huge fan of the Krimh and also the Trivium pack which they just released a few years back, I'm super stoked for this one, especially since ELOY Drums is all about ELOY CASAGRANDE. You might know him from his work with Sepultura or now his work with Slipknot. He's an absolute beast on the drums. He's one of the best drummers in the world, in my personal opinion, especially when it comes to metal. Super heavy hitter, so I'm very excited for what we're getting over here out of this drum library. So if you are watching my channel on the regular, then first off, thank you, but you might have recognized that I already had a video released on ELOY Drums. I took that one down because I made a few crucial mistakes on that one. First off, I totally did not know that there was actually not only one drum kit in the ELOY Drums, but there are actually two drum kits, CasaGrande and CasaGroove. So I wasn't aware of that one, so I butchered that. I completely missed that. And also, I recognized that the mastering chain was on the entire time, so what you heard in that video was not reflective of the actual drum library. So I decided I'm going to reshoot that thing. I'm going to make my mistake clean it out, make it straight. Yeah, so that's why you're seeing now another video of ELOY Drums. That said, also here the disclaimer that Bogren Digital has sent me a license for free to check out and make the video about. Now, I'm not actually paid or within their marketing strategy. I personally reach out to them on, learning about the release of ELOY Drums, and I just asked the fine people at Bogren Digital if they would be happy sending me out a license to make a video and do some content on that one, and they were glad enough to do so. And for that, I want to say a huge thank you, but also disclaim that this video is technically sponsored. I think it's also especially worth noting that Bogren Digital has been trusting me over the years with a lot of different plugins, a lot of different licenses for their software portfolio, and for that I'm super grateful because I'm well aware that I'm just a small dude doing this in my hobbyist room over here. So thank you very much, Bogren Digital. I now got the Reaper session opened where I got ELOY Drums deployed, and as you can see, I got this open in Contact Player from Native Instruments. Native Instruments offers a sample player which is called Contact, and that is where you load a ton of different drum libraries, also the ones from Bogren Digital. So you have to download it from the Native Instruments website. I think their downloader portal thing is called Native Access. There you can access the Contact Player, you can add the serials for the ELOY Drums, and then you can load it within the Contact Player. That's one of the downfalls in my personal opinion when it comes to this plugin. I'm not a huge fan of Contact Player. It's sometimes very slow loading, especially when you go out and back into the plugin and stuff like that. There are a few fixes for that one, but they don't work 100%, so I still sometimes get obnoxiously long loading times. I'd love to see a standalone player for these drum libraries from Bogren Digital, but for, as a matter of fact, right now we do have the Contact Player. We have to live with that one, and it's a small sacrifice for the great tones which we're getting. When you are in Contact Player, you got two different banks, they're called. So you got ELOY Drums CasaGrande, which is this kit over here, which you're seeing, and you got ELOY Drums CasaGroove. I'm now going to quickly open CasaGroove so that just that we can look at how it looks. You can see a very different vibe going on. I'm not fully sure, but I think that the ELOY Drums CasaGroove is based on the sounds which ELOY CasaGrande was having during playing with Sepultura, while the CasaGrande pretty much, I'm pretty sure on that one, is kind of his Slipknot sound, where he's currently, you know, employed by or a part of the band. With that out of the way, let's go through the user interface. Now, what you see up over here is basically Kontact's preset loader, where you can have different options of which bank you want to choose, which preset do you want to choose. This is an important one. We're going to get into that later point in time. You got a few generic settings, how big you want the screen to be, how much you want to detune up and down your drum kit or your sample, and then in general the panning, volume, all of that stuff. So you got these generic controls over here. Down below is where the actual drum plugin, if you want to say so, starts, where you got the kit view, the mixer, and the grooves as the main focus. When it comes to the kit view, you got this obvious kit stuff where you can click on the single elements and then you're going to hear what it sounds like. We're going to do that at a later point. I first want to go through the user interface. Over here, we got the mixer, which is a very, very powerful tool. We're going to check that out also later, at least briefly. I'm not that huge of a mixing guy, but just to kind of showcase what is possible. And you got some cool stuff in the mixer section where you can load your own samples. Also for that, I got an example which I want to go through. And then in the end, you got the MIDI grooves, where you can actually have MIDI grooves which are played by ELOY CASAGRANDE with this plugin, and you can actually drag them into your DAW and then be creative. So if you're not fond of programming your own drums, this is exactly what you then need. Over here, you got a few different other options. We got the anti-machine gun and the auto double kick. The anti-machine gun is a little bit of an automated humanization tool in case you got like a lot of different hits after another. So that might be very useful if you have like very extreme drum rolls, so that it's a little bit automated in the velocity. And the auto double kick is that if you have quick drum, kick rolls, that's what I wanted to say. So then there's an automated change between kick 1 and kick 2. So if you have like this super quick double bass patterns, then the auto double kick will engage, and therefore you have a little bit of variation. Over here, when pressing on this cogwheel, you got the MIDI mapping over here. I'm gonna upload note name map for Reaper, so that way you can load that instantly into your MIDI bank and you then have all of the namings. What is new is that we have so much elements that we actually have a second page over here, which is quite crazy, you know, considering where we started with Krimh drums, and now we have that much options. We have the aftertouch cymbal chokes, which is pretty cool, and then we have the velocity curves as well, which I'm not going to play around with. Yeah, so this is the user interface, and with that, let's get to the kit. Looking at the kit, we got a ton of options when it comes to shells and cymbals over here. However, note that when you are looking at the respective individual things like Tom 1, Tom 2, Tom 3, the different cymbals, except for the snare and the kick drum, you only have one option per element. However, that is absolutely enough. I don't need an absolute extensive collection of all the different cymbals there are if I have one which sounds awesome. So that's what you get. You get basically that kit from ELOY CASAGRANDE with a little bit of variation, especially on the snare. I'm gonna mute my microphone, then I'm gonna run through the different snares, and then I'm gonna run through the different single elements of this particular entire kit. That is an absolute stellar sounding kit if you ask me. I personally really like the Black Beauty snare. This one over here, it sounds so full but still cranked up. Man, I love this one. This is not without reason a classic. I would assume it's a Ludwig Black Beauty, I mean, as the name suggests. However, when it comes to Eloy playing in Slipknot, I am well aware that he has like this very honky sounding snare, but with a lot of attack and ping. And this is, I think, the bell brass, which is damped. All right, let's go over to CasaGroove and just check out the single elements of the kick as well, so that we got that out of the way. A lot of the stuff, you know, like the user interface, the core concept is exactly the same. I mean, it's super obvious. It makes sense that that's kind of the same thing. If I'm not mistaken, then the CasaGroove is basically his older Sepultura setup, while the Casagrande is his Slipknot setup. Okay, I'm gonna mute my microphone again. Let's do this on the fly, and then I'm gonna run again through the different elements. Now that we have listened to the single elements of the kit, let's now put this into perspective when playing loops or when using the entire kit in itself. There are a few different ways you can go about this. You can either program your own loop or use one of the MIDI grooves, or, which is a pretty cool feature of Content Player, which I just recently found out about, is when you click on one of these over here, you're going to hear a pre-configured loop or a beat playing with the respective bank / preset. So I'm gonna do this for the ELOY Drums CasaGrande. And now when I click on CasaGroove, it's gonna sound different. Because it's taking the respective, you know, like default template of that bank and playing through that. So now we can go actually through all of the presets of both CasaGrande and CasaGroove at once without changing, without having to do anything, by just clicking over here in the Content Player, which is a pretty neat feature, I must say. And that is something which really, really fascinates me, how different all of these presets sound. I mean, that means that the mixer makes a huge difference, and that is the next segment. Just to kind of recap what we just explored, when I listen to the F Street Grande, and now I go to another thing which I know is in the Grande suite, like the Dan Suano Unisound Grande, or even more so the La Salamat Ringy Mofo, you can hear that they sound completely different. They sound like what I would consider 5 years ago a completely different drum library. So why is that? The reason for that is in the power of the mixer setup. The mixer setup is super, super strong in this plugin suite. It's better than it is in Krimh. Krimh is a little bit limited in that regard. Trivium already went into the right direction with that. So they already got that nailed down with the mixer and all of the different settings. And over here, in my personal opinion, they really perfected how they integrated this mixer over here. This allows me to do so much stuff in the mixer setup so that I can just simply reroute that or leave that on the stereo out of this track which I got, or this project, and I don't have to do this rerouting to sequential outputs and then do everything on my own with my own plugins. You can do that, you got that possibility, but you don't have to. And this is super cool because I'm not that much of a mixing guy. I'm rather that guy. I want to have a plug and play thing, but I still want to have a little bit flexibility. So that's what I'm getting over here. I got this drum loop over here prepared. As you can see, that's why I was kind of moving the windows so that I get the right loop. Let me showcase what I got set up over here. So this is a longer loop, where I tried to incorporate a lot of different elements from the kit. And then it's starting again from start. What I'm now gonna do is, first I'm gonna play around with the kick in the context of the entire drum kit, and then I'm gonna isolate maybe the snare and play a little bit around to kind of emphasize the differences which you can do. So let's just get looping and then do some creative work. So you already can hear what kind of changes are possible in this regard, and that's something which I really, really enjoy. I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing over here, basically, so I'm gonna go back over here to the F Street Grande normal preset, because some people who do that better than I do already have done a lot of work in that, but it just showcases how much you can do on this one. And that's not all what you can do over here. You also have the possibility on the kick and on the snare to load in your custom one-shot samples over here. I'm just gonna kind of showcase something just to get across the idea. Now, there is one particular drum sample which I like to use together with our drummer from my band Tempest. It's a sample which I just took out of the And Justice for All kick, mixed that in with other samples. We then just made a one-shot sample. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna search for that file, drag this over here, and then we're gonna play around with it. All right, I now found the kick sample which I was searching for, and it's super easy as pie. You just simply take the WAV file and you drag and drop it over here, and then it loads it in there, and you already can see that this is now working perfect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna solo the kick trigger. I'm not going to use the built-in kick trigger, which is the Harder Please sample. I'm going to mute that as well. So you're only going to hear my personal kick sample thing. It's not going to sound that good, but for live, it really does work. So now I could go ahead and add my trigger sound and push that in order to enhance the kick. Without, with the trigger. And now you could do the same thing for the snare. Let me see if I can find a snare sample. All right, in Steven Slate SSD5, I found a snare sample. I mean, it's not going to sound that good. I don't like that sample that much, but it's just to demonstrate what it's all about. So drag and drop again. Now you can hear that snare over here. Let me solo out this particular channel, and then we can hear what the snare sounds like. Again, the snare trigger, which is integrated into Bogren Digital's ELOY drums, is muted, so I'm only listening to my custom snare one shot. And now I can blend that, put a little bit reverb on that one, turn the pitch, make the volume a little bit higher. So you got all these possibilities. I mean, as I said before, I'm not the greatest when it comes to doing this kind of stuff and mixing. I'm still learning, but it is cool that you have this possibility, and yeah, super strong capabilities within the mixer setup over here. You even have bleed control. That's also something which I find really interesting. So if I just take the overheads and the room, and I set up the bleed respectively, you can hear the kick or not, as a matter of fact. Really cool stuff, super flexible in that regard, and you can do a lot of different things with this mixer setup. Let's get to the next segment, the MIDI grooves. And let me preface this by stating that I'm doing this kind of digital music creation, like recording stuff through plugins at home, working out with MIDI drums. I'm doing this stuff since 2008 or 2009. So I'm nearly 2 decades in, or 1.5 decades for a matter of fact. However, I gained a lot of experience. I had the time to actually dive deep into that stuff. So I'm capable of programming my drum loops by myself. So if you go over here and look at the MIDI map, you can see that I got the MIDI map naming going on over here. And all of this programming I did just by hand by clicking around with my mouse over here in, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 minutes or so. Yeah, and this is what it sounds like. You heard it before, but let's listen to it again. However, I'm fully aware that not everybody has this, set of experience and a set of skills which they can look back upon and then utilize. But do not fret, because Bogren Digital has you covered over the MIDI grooves, at least to give you a starting point. So ELOY CASAGRANDE himself played a few beats on maybe a MIDI triggered drum kit or maybe an electronic drum kit, I don't know, but they definitely captured his performance through MIDI triggers, and you can actually build your own loops by doing so, or your own beats. And this is what I'm gonna do now. So my project speed on Reaper is set to 190, and that's no coincidence because I know that the thrash metal stuff over here from ELOY CASAGRANDE is around 190 BPM. So I'm gonna go into the grooves menu, into the MIDI pack, then under thrash metal, and now I got all of these different options. If I now double click on one of these options, it's gonna play that respective beat. For example, thrash metal 5 is a quite generic beat. I already checked that. So it's basically just a loop of the same beat over and over again. I think that's a cool beat. We can work with that and do something creative out of it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use the drag MIDI functionality, and it is exactly what it states to be. You just click on here, you drag it, and now you can set a MIDI file on your DAW's track over here. This is my MIDI track where ELOY CASAGRANDE is loaded. And if you now scroll a little bit closer, let's make that a little bit better visible, you can see that you got this MIDI item over here with the respective points. Now we could do that for a few other beats as well. Let's just listen to, I don't know, thrash metal 10. That's a cool thing. That's a cool, you know, like a differentiation when it comes to the beat. Let's listen to thrash metal 9. That's a little bit too wild. Thrash metal 10 is pretty cool because it has this half beat tempo going on. I wanted to make the mistake that I just dragged this over here. That's not going to work, but I got it. I got to now load it in here via double clicking on that, and then I can drag the MIDI. So there we go. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, now I got this same segment also 4 times. So I got this. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to spice things up a little bit, because just having the same repetition over and over again is going to be boring pretty quickly. And therefore we got some fills over here. So you can click on one of them. It's a little bit chaotic because it's kind of just repeating all the time. So let's listen to this over here. That one I like more because it has this nice crank to it. Okay, so we're gonna just drag, no. Once again, I fall for the same trick. We're gonna drag the MIDI over here, so we're gonna place it there. Let's leave it for now there, and let's now look at the other fills. If I want to listen to it in a little bit slower tempo, I can click on the playback speed being 1/2. That could be a cool fill for the mid section, for that slower section. So let's go ahead and drag this over here. So it's going to actually also export in the playback speed which you have selected, which is cool. So, and now you can go ahead and maybe do some splicing and adding in the fills. So every second fill over here. That's where I want to have the fill. Okay, there we go. And then the same thing over here when it goes over to the slow beat. Then maybe split that section over here, move that around. So it's a little bit, you know, like you got to find your way through that. You got to play a little bit around with what you got. There we go. That's the 4th out of the 4 beats. There we go. And maybe there again a quick beat. Let's actually have this beat at 1 speed. There we go. Let's listen to what this sounds like. And now we could basically copy paste that section again. Let's glue everything together, open it in the MIDI section so that I can set it to diamond mode, so that way I can see a little bit better what's actually happening. And we got a MIDI groove. All right, nice. Now I can go ahead and open up a track where I already got a guitar plugin loaded. In this case, I am proudly using the amp knob over here. Sounds like so. Ah, it's not yet engaged. There we go. You still can hear it, okay, because it's not soloed. Now. That's good enough for just riffing along. And I'm now gonna turn off my microphone so that I can turn on the metronome, but you can still hear the recording. I totally butchered that, but however, I mean, the concept and the idea behind it still comes across. And that way you can get creative and splice yourself some songs together using the grooves functionality. Now, you are not bound to only using the ELOY CASAGRANDE MIDI packs over here. You can use, of course, whatever MIDI packs there are available on the market. A lot of them are made for Superior Drummer setup, but do not fret, because you can actually change the MIDI mapping so that it matches with the Easy Drummer or Superior Drummer, so that way you are fully prepared for anything which can come up in that regard, and you have like no boundaries to your creativity in that regard. That is really cool. It's an awesome plugin. You know, like, everything has been thought of in this drum library, which I could possibly think of, and I am all in for it. Bogren Digital has released 3 different drum plugins by now, or drum libraries, more to say. Krimh drums, Trivium drums, and ELOY drums. Now the question would be, which one should you choose? Because as far as I'm concerned, only Krimh has a free version, which you can actually try. And in order to give you a little bit at your hands, what I'm gonna do over here is I'm gonna play the drums from the demo track on their own through each of these different drum libraries, but on their default template. Following that process, you're at least getting enough tools in order to make a judgment on which of these drum libraries suit your needs the best. Now that we got the comparison out of the way, let's wrap up this video and get to the conclusion, which is ELOY Drums being a fantastic addition to the Bogren Digital drum library portfolio. Alone, through the fact that you have two different kits, CasaGrande and CasaGroove, you already got a lot of versatility within this drum library. But given the fact that you can manipulate the sound of the drums so strongly through the mixer setup, makes this an absolute beast of a plugin with so much flexibility. I mean, it already sounds fantastic out of the gate, which is very important for me because I'm not that type of mixing guy. I would maybe eventually change out the snare for the Black Beauty one, and then I could easily just live with that for pre-production purposes. And if I want to kind of, you know, make a little bit more of a customizable sound, then I can do that actually. Really, really awesome. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. I mean, the rest, like the anti-machine gun, auto double kick, the MIDI grooves, stuff like that, is already implemented into the other plugins. I already explored that, so they're not as exciting to me as the actual core drum library because I already am well aware of that. However, these are great features as well, which deserved their own respective place within this product review. Yeah, and with that out of the way, I would like to say a huge thank you to first Bogren Digital, who have sponsored this video by providing a license for free. I really, really appreciate that they are trusting me since so long. Really feels good as a small content creator to get that, you know, like support. I want to thank you everybody for watching this video. If you like what you've seen, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any updates on the channel. And with that out of the way, everybody, see you in the next video. Until then, keep it metal.